Good morning, everybody, and thank you to the EU CAP Network for having me. And I'm delighted to be part of this today, and thanks for Anya as well. It's great to see somebody else from Ireland alongside us today. So I'm going to look at a little bit of the work that we, I suppose, undertook in the previous National Rural Network for Ireland. But I think we engaged quite a lot with the operational groups, with the IP Agri, with the whole concept of AKIS throughout our time in the network. And I think we achieved some interesting kind of aspects of dissemination, of knowledge transfer, of working with the various operational groups. So I'm going to give you a look at that this morning. And again, I suppose I'm going to look at a wide variety of innovations that we used ourselves in order to connect with the operational groups, in order to enhance the IP Agri operational groups on the ground in Ireland, and I suppose enhance that idea, that new idea of AKIS that came through as we moved through the National Rural Network at the time. So I'm going to look at a variety of these resources that we used and developed over the space of a number of years. And again, we did this work, I suppose, as the National Rural Network on the last time around. We worked with Irish Rural Link, The Wheel, and the Philip Farley Group. I myself was from the University of Galway, and I worked alongside Shane Conway, a colleague of mine at the time. And I suppose for us, initial engagement in all of this became hugely important. It embedded us as the National Rural Network, the now CAP networks, into what was happening in the operational groups in AKIS, and I think that became really important. Whether that open call becomes part of your own CAP network or whether it becomes part of the member state. For us, it was the Department of Agriculture that put out the call. So to become embedded in that in the very beginning, that evaluation process, I think for us allowed us to become much more aware of the projects of the operational groups, and it gave us a commitment to the projects that were there. And I think that it was that commitment that allowed us to ensure that we disseminated, that we worked with, and that we supported all of those groups right from the start. So I think for me that was hugely important, that we became part of that evaluation process. And in doing that, I suppose we disseminated quite successfully those groups because we got to know them from the outset. I think our initial part of thinking about, particularly for us, the EIP Agri operational group projects that were there on the ground, was mapping them. And I think that transfers to the mapping processes that we see in AKIS today. And that became hugely important. And for us, it allowed us, I suppose, to map projects, but also to make sure that the mapping exercises that we had, they were transferable material for the operational groups on the ground. They were material that we could give to any operational groups and they could utilise, print and disseminate in any process that they needed themselves. For us, I think what we really learned from this was the idea of place identity, people identity. People that are involved in the operational groups, let that be a farmer or an advisor, place identity and project identity is hugely important for them. So to have a visual context of their actual project became hugely important. And I think for us, that was a huge part of disseminating the operational groups on the ground. This idea of printed material, and I suppose sometimes we all engage in newsletters, bulletin, booklets, posters, all of that, but sometimes we underestimate the power of that material, and we underestimate the power of that material for the average farmer or advisory on the ground, and all of a sudden they see themselves in this material, and this material is disseminated, be it on social media or a printed material at a workshop. That has a powerful indicator for those individuals that they're actually a part of something. And I think that for us was hugely important. As with many of you, we printed in both Irish and in English languages, again, which was very important. It was very important for the people who speak Irish in our country that they had this material within their language. Again, it allowed us, I suppose, and helped us to disseminate those booklets, that material widely. I think for us, we congregated an awful lot of the operational group projects into particular booklets, and we used and disseminated those booklets as often as we could. Again, it created a huge form again of identity for those operational group members. And again, the dissemination of the actual projects, the actual ideas of the projects, the learning of the project, all became part of those booklets. We also, I suppose, in Ireland created a one-stop shop, and this linked for us, I think, that Irish and international kind of thinking. It linked for us into the now EU CAP network and what they were doing within an Irish context. So I suppose this one-stop shop, it allowed us to have the abstract for that operational group, it allowed us to have the mapping, it allowed us to have any knowledge, any video material that they were creating, any booklets that we created. So allowed all of this material to be very easily accessible, both within an Irish and an international perspective. It became very visual, what we felt was hugely important for us and hugely important for our operational groups on the ground. It also became quite personable. We had the voice of those people within all of this workshops, within all of this one-stop shop, and I think that also helped us and allowed us to disseminate this as very much a one-stop shop and a project database for all of the people involved. Again, and the speakers before me have talked about events. I'm particularly very impressed with the idea of the workshop and the event that Finland just produced and just disseminated. And again, I think sometimes we do underestimate the level of interaction that can happen at these events. And I suppose COVID has introduced us hugely to the online forum that we have. And again, it can be hugely successful in a scenario, I suppose, where you don't get the opportunity to work directly or face to face. But again, now that we have the opportunity to create workshops, to create events, to create conferences at a face-to-face medium, it again is hugely important and can deliver a message much quicker than, I suppose, what we had via an online forum. So the dissemination, the communication, particularly the hard to reach, again, speaking, I think it was a Finland man this morning that spoke about that 1,000 kilometres from a particular area. For us, we see not the distance in Ireland, but we definitely see peripheral areas and hard to reach as well. So all of these events, all of this, again, face-to-face, online, or events can really give different courage to different people and different operational group members to come forward at these events and to present their work and their operational group. Again, as we moved through, I suppose, the operational groups, we did feel very much so that the farmers' voice in particular was not being heard as much as we would have liked in Ireland. So we decided to use this video blog idea, this V-blog or vlog idea. And again, for us, this became quite powerful. And particularly during COVID, when we weren't actually able to get out on site and video these ourselves, it was amazing how quickly a farmer or an advisor or a researcher was able to say, I can do that myself, I can use my phone, I can do it myself. And very quickly we created real stories with real people and we promoted their ideas. And we also promoted how it was so easy to replicate these ideas with different people on the ground. So you had the farmer speaking about what he did in the operational group. You had the advisor promoting the idea of the advisory service, and all of this being part of this video blog idea. So you got the real story by the actual person that was doing it. And again, this became hugely successful, particularly social media. It floats unbelievably well on social media, these vlogs, these stories. Again, I think tapping into what's going on was something that we did very well in Ireland. Increasingly, internationally, we have everything from a Biodiversity Week to Women in Agriculture Week to Conservation Week. And I suppose all of these nationally can be held by hugely diverse organisations within each of our countries. Tapping into these as the new CAP networks, I think, can become really, really important. And I think just tapping into these and disseminating. We would create a week-long exercise via the Biodiversity Week, and on every day of the week we disseminated a different operational group or a different project or a different piece of material or a different poster or booklet that we had within that week. Again, as far as social media was concerned, it had an unbelievably huge reach for us. Again, a guest blog series was something that we did as well, and it really brought to focus that multi-actor perspective, that multi-actor approach. So we would connect with any of the farming community, any of the advisory community, the research community, any of the different practitioners or people on the ground, and we would ask them if they weren't happy with writing the blog themselves, we would write it for them, or else we prepared very definite ideas on how to write it. So again, over the course of the time, we, I suppose, engaged with a huge amount of people and gathered a huge amount of multi-actor perspectives, and then again disseminated them. Again, that particular individual guest, allowing them to have their voice heard, again disseminated very, very well. Teaming up was something that we did very well, and I suppose we teamed up in particularly with the signpost series that Teagasc and the National Rural Network at the time came together, and we had a huge amount of dissemination of particular ideas, particular advisors, researchers that would speak on a particular day. And I think connecting with organisations on the ground within your country becomes hugely important. We ourselves in the University of Galway have a Rural Voices seminar series. We would invite people from the operational groups, from the EIP Agri projects, and we would invite them to disseminate within an hour-long series of that as well. The Burn Winteridge School is a widely known school, again within an Irish context. On several occasions we would have collaborated with them and disseminated different projects from the operational groups and different ideas from AKIS within that forum. Again, for us, the idea of what you don't know, please try and find out, was what we were thinking. And again, we carried out different surveys, we carried out different pieces of research as we were there, particularly in relation to the EIP Agri operational groups that were there. And we found a huge amount of information that we were able then to tailor into the conferences, the networking events that we had, and I suppose to transform the ideas and the thinkings that were there. So again, that was quite successful for us. And finally, I suppose the lessons for us that we have learned that can be transferred very successfully to any AKIS right across Europe is knowledge, I suppose, is power, and that becomes hugely important. And the knowledge is not just for us, the knowledge is also for every person involved in that operational group. Information needs to be very, very accessible. I suppose we underestimate sometimes the level of ability people have to disseminate, or I suppose to construct the type of material that we disseminate. So it becomes hugely important that we use simple language, we use a lot of visual material that can be seen and disseminated. And in that sense, visual is key. Language is simple. Local is also essential. Connect the people to where they live. Place identity becomes hugely important for dissemination for us. Innovation is very achievable, and getting that message across is paramount to what we do. And I think people are central. It is people that are a huge part of everything we do. Keep them central to the dissemination models that you have. And I think if you do that, there will be huge success in whatever you're disseminating. So, Gormila Mahagat from Ireland, and thank you very much. Thank you, Anya.